Welcome to another Code Talk. Today we have the pleasure to meet Dr. Paolo Granata. He is a professor in book and media studies at St. Michael's College of the University of Toronto. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
So first things first, Paolo, tell us a bit about your background.
Well, I'm currently at the University of Toronto, but I spent most of my career in the University of Bologna, my alma mater. In the University of Bologna, I've been teaching for 15 years in the field of art history, communication, heritage, and cultural communication. And so I really feel that the University of Bologna gave me solid roots to undertake then a different career abroad. And at the University of Toronto, I found my new intellectual home.
Sounds good. So you said that you come from Italy. So as an Italian trained in the University of Bologna, as you just said, how did you become involved with all things Marshall McLuhan?
Right, good question. At the University of Bologna, I learned how important it is to find a method, a methodology to be applied to any field. And so I've been trained in the field of aesthetics and semiotics that are methodological disciplines. And so once you have a method, of course you have to then find a specific field to apply that method. When I met Marshall McLuhan, I entered Marshall McLuhan through the door of aesthetics and theory of perception and the way media actually affected the way we perceive and feel the world. And so it was a natural destination for me after discovering that Marshall McLuhan as a subject of study could really provide me with that opportunity to apply my method, to apply the methodological disciplines I learned in the University of Bologna to more contemporary questions. And so Marshall McLuhan inspired my destination, but the starting point was Bologna. It was a genuine humanistic tradition. And so from the genuine humanistic tradition of the University of Bologna, in Toronto, I found my stage to follow the footsteps of Marshall McLuhan and understanding the media around us.
Mm-hmm. So speaking about media today, if good old Marshall McLuhan was still alive, what would he think about the kind of media maelstrom we live in today? I'm talking about in what ways is media ecology a useful approach for understanding, making sense of this mess we live in?
Absolutely. $1 million question. It's a $1 million question. The most important, I think, reflection is that firstly, Marshall McLuhan used to say, I don't predict the future, I only observe what's already here. And so my approach is to critically understand what's around us without taking for granted the invisible presence of media around us. And so today Marshall McLuhan was, if he was still alive today, I think we could take from him the approach of not just observing the content of our media environment, but to understand the context. And the context is what really makes the difference in the way we understand, the way we undertake even our field of study. Nowadays, our media environment is a meta-medium that really englobes, within which we are immersed, entirely immersed. And so, yeah, I will take from him the ability to look at the context, to look at the things we take for granted without being necessarily distracted by contents or messages of all kinds.
So it's interesting that you highlighted context, because in my next question, it has to do a bit about, it's connected to context and how it affects the way we engage with media. So let's going back to the question. So in 2019, you founded a research hub called the Media Ethics Lab. So what roles does this institution play in connecting McLuhan's legacy to contemporary debates about biases of technology, for example, especially considering that the usual criticism against media ecology is techno-determinism?
Absolutely. So excellent points. First point is to follow Marshall McLuhan's approach that goes under the banner of city as a classroom. We wanted to step out of the university and into the city, into the civil society, to really undertake a research with a social impact. So undertaking a kind of research that can foster social change. Applied research, not just theoretical research in the field. And so to be practical, to be more socially engaged, we wanted to create the Media Ethics Lab to understand and study the potential of information technological information technologies for fostering social change, for understanding even the ethical implications that are now involved in emerging technologies such as AI or any other emerging technology. So it's a practical way, again, to step out of the university and into the city. And to the topic of technological determinism, this is precisely one of the things that inspired the Media Ethics Lab. And so to not just focus on the technological change, not just focus on technological issues. If there are ethical concerns, ethical issues, they cannot be solved by the means of technology. We believe that if there is a technological issue, it must be solved by the means of culture, by the means of societal frameworks and new societal frameworks that we need in order to solve technological problems.
So, yeah, it's interesting that you point that out, because since the very beginning, I mean, Marshall McLuhan has had sought after, those connections, those links between culture and technology. So far as, naming the Center of Culture and Technology of the University of Toronto. So I'm personally critical of those approaches, accusing media ecology of being technological determinist, when media ecology is complex, and of course it can take context into account in order to, to study the media ecosystem. So speaking about studying this media ecosystem, I heard through the grapevine, that means Carlos Escolari, Professor Carlos Escolari told me that you have a knack for experimental pedagogy with media. So can you elaborate a bit on your experience, for example, with teaching and learning in the metaverse?
Absolutely. So once again, following the footsteps of Marshall McLuhan, we used to say, I don't explain, I explore. And I think this is the most beautiful part of our job. So as researchers and educators, we are free to explore, right? Instead of just explaining things, we can explore new possibilities without a certain destination. So the beauty of traveling, the beautiful thing that exploration is to undertake a journey, undertake an exploration without necessarily know what's the destination. And so, based on this philosophy, I wanted to explore the potential of rethinking online learning in light, of course, of the pandemic times. So basically, during the pandemic, I was wondering, is there a third way between in-person and online? And after thinking for a while, I said, maybe the third way is virtual reality that can enable us to foster experiential learning, a spontaneous human interaction, an immersive environment, and so fostering a sense of unique, extraordinary experience. When we experience something new, we learn better. We remember everything because it's an extraordinary experience. So my journey into the virtual reality, my first footsteps into the metaverse were essentially based on exploring the potential of the virtual reality and metaverse for fostering experiential learning, extraordinary experiences, integrated and spontaneous human interaction, and particularly the interaction because the metaverse is different than virtual reality. Virtual reality that has been around for a long while, let's say since the 90s, it was available to researchers and artists, but it was a solo experience. Essentially, you could do amazing things, but alone. In the metaverse, let's say beyond the buzz of this word that is now branded particularly by Meta, but the beauty of metaverse is that it's social, it's a virtual reality, but social. It's not a solo experience, it's a social experience. So I wanted to give my students the opportunity to learn together with other students, with the professor, experimenting interactions, experimenting an immersive environment by fostering the idea that together we can learn better, we can create more meaningful activities that will be memorable, that will be unforgettable, and will definitely ultimately boost a more passionate way of learning.
You mentioned that it all started in the pandemic, but 3 years later, it looks like this fuss around the metaverse has pretty much died down. And speaking about that from a media evolution perspective, not media ecology, media evolution perspective, it could be said that as a media species, let's say the metaverse as a media species, was soon predated by this emerging media that is artificial intelligence, and metaverse didn't have the chance to go past that emerging phase because it was a competitor like artificial intelligence was gaining the space. So do you agree with this assessment? How do you assess, or how do you see the trajectory of the metaverse in these last 3 years?
Absolutely. I see a trajectory which is rooted into the idea of conceiving the metaverse as a social space, likely interoperable, where people can be engaged in stories, conversations, and social activities. That's why, for instance, from a, let's say, practical and industry perspective, the game industry has a great potential for making the metaverse finally achieve a higher level. Because in the game industry, which is the biggest industry, entertainment industry in the world, topping beyond $200 billion yearly this year in 2022 and likely more in 2023. So because it's the biggest entertainment industry, there's a great potential of, again, using the same extent of experimentation, the experience on narrative. So what is a video game but an engaging stories that we participate in, so that we developed. I like to say that from a media evolution perspective, we've always been virtual to some extent. Reading a nice book or just listening an engaging story is a way to bring ourselves into a virtual reality. And our speeches is particularly good at not just dealing with the objective reality around us, but to create new realities. We created new realities when we invented religions, arts, magic, and all literature, poetry, all the human expressions are nothing but a way to manifest the possibility of the human species to live and create new realities. Virtual reality is a new tool that we invented, but essentially under the same banner of creating stories, creating environments we want to live in, to undertake, to foster imagination, creativity, and participation, so along with other people. And to connect to your point to artificial intelligence, it's now it's a very interesting moment because essentially we realize that the potential of generative AI can be applied to any field. Now it's very easy to essentially use text generators, voice generators, video generators, text-to-image generators. Next step, which is already actually in development, is virtual reality generators, essentially based on a prompt. Instead of just generating an image, based on a textual prompt, you could create an entire virtual reality world created by generative AI, based on data sets and models of all kinds, and that opens up to endless possibilities, because instead of just creating one 2D picture, you can create, just using a textual prompt, an entire virtual world to dive in and experiment.
Don't give ideas to Mark Zuckerberg, because maybe in the future we can have, a fusion between, a merge between the metaverse and generative AI, for example. So maybe it could be an idea for Mark.
Yeah, absolutely. I believe the Meta will be not successful at building their own metaverse. This is their intention. And the only metaverse that will be really successful will be interoperable, open to shared protocols, open to everyone, private and public companies. In the same way we started building internet in the 90s. Internet in the 90s was an open space where actors and players of all kinds were able to successfully start up new things. So the intention of building one metaverse is likely not going to happen, because we want to, and the most successful enterprises in the digital world are the enterprises that are interoperable, social, but mostly shared in terms of protocols in order to give possibilities to anyone.
So yeah, we'll see in the upcoming years how this plays out. So we've just opened the can of worms. ChatGPT, again, artificial intelligence, it's being banned in your home country, Italy, over data protection. You've just pointed out some ethical concerns over there. So, and since last December, it has had, the educational community either in outrage, either, being scared about the potential implications of it. And beyond the panics, because every time a new technology emerges, there's always a panic. And from a more level-headed perspective, what's the potential of artificial intelligence for learning?
Right. So for this question, I'm going to actually ask ChatGPT for an answer, if you don't mind. I'm just kidding. But essentially, of course, it's the...
I gather the question will be biased, maybe.
There may be biased, the question, or maybe too generic, if the question is too generic. So firstly, we are living a very interesting moment, absolutely interesting moment. So we are really seeing the rise of the AI that is mainstream. So till now, AI was in charge of a limited group of researchers, industries, policymakers, and it was not widely available. So essentially it was a kind of obscure kind of alchemy, right? A new digital alchemy. Everyone was talking
magic.
about AI,
it's obscure, dark.
kind of magic. It's dark magic, but no one knew actually how practically AI could work. Starting November 2022, it's a kind of iconic starting point, because AI became mainstream. So anyone could be, to some extent, shocked or surprised on the extent of questions related to the answers, actually. The level of development, and particularly the fact that it was available to anyone for free.
It remembers how when the internet became mainstream. For me, it's kind of the same shock and the same amazement.
Yeah, and interest, because people wanted to experiment. At the beginning of internet, people get very creative in experimenting. Artists started, you may remember the very first experiment with net art, right? Net art using the web for making art. So it's happening pretty much the same with AI, and actually happened already with virtual reality. With virtual reality, I felt the same feelings I felt back in the 90s when I started working on internet. Of course, we did a lot of mistakes with internet. We let internet grow as a wild forest, and now it's controlled by a few giants.
Now it's a farm.
Yeah, like a Fabra, but controlled by a few big giants. I think we can learn from mistakes and likely not make the same mistakes we did with virtual reality, with internet in virtual reality, and likely not making the same mistake with AI and its incredible development. So firstly, I do really welcome the excitement, because we need all kind of players being passionate and exploring the potential of this emerging technology. We need educators experimenting with AI to understand the potential that this technology can have on education. We need artists. This is a public call. Please, artists, get engaged with AI, because we need that vision, the artistic, poetic imagination of the artists that can discover the potential of this technology and likely even discovering the unintended implications. Of course, we need policymakers, policymakers that can help regulators to create new regulations. What happened in Italy, to put it short, is that they applied old models to regulate something new. And to regulate something new, we need new models, new frameworks, new policies. That's why we need policymakers, we need artists, we need educators, and a variety of variety to really understand the best way to cope with this shock, as you said, is understanding. And if we want to translate this word in a different way, is AI literacy. We need to be literated, understanding the potential or balancing risks and opportunities, not to be so much afraid of risks or too much enthusiastic about the potential or positive implications. So with the right balance between the two, understanding the implications, understanding the technology, and because we fear what we don't know.
Yes,
but if we know it, if we, from different perspectives, get to know what is AI, what are the implications, there will be a better reception, there will be a better opportunities for everyone without leaving anyone behind, because there are many risks. When a technology pops up so quickly, the risk is that there is a huge part of the population that is left behind, right? So, and won't be able to access it. So if at all levels we are all engaged in experimenting and understanding, that's why AI literacy, so the idea of being literate from different perspectives, only understanding will give us the right wisdom to proceed and take the most of this emerging technology.
So, yeah, in terms of learning, I was thinking about how this new advancement, let's say, can change the way we acquire knowledge, because it's Marshall McLuhan said it's the best. I think the best aphorism or the best slogan that you can take, that in the end, media is an extension of humankind. So how can our own learning can be extended by artificial intelligence?
Absolutely, great point. And by extending the human senses and human abilities, technology becomes a new environment. Any technology, Marshall McLuhan used to say, any technology tends to create a new environment. That's why with AI, we now live in a new environment. So in the ecological change, the technological change is ecological, affects all aspects of society. So AI is not going to affect only one aspect. So because the technological change is always ecological. That's why it's changing many fields. One of those fields is education. So we should be pretty much expert in this field. So firstly, the change is already happening, because essentially educators of all kinds, from primary schools to university, at the beginning of the ChatGPT revolution, realized that that was a game changer. The students started using these tools, and some smart students started using even ChatGPT 2 or ChatGPT 1 that were around for a while. So now ChatGPT...
Those two versions were more interesting than the ChatGPT 3.
Exactly. But essentially, the revolution has already started. You cannot stop it. And so the field of education, I think it's already aware of the big change. Then, of course, there are different reactions. Some more conservative approaches would like to ban ChatGPT from universities or schools, would like to limit its usage and so on. Pretty much the same like happening, you may remember, in the 70s. No, you're too young, likely.
I wasn't even born in the 70s.
Exactly, but in the 70s, I was a kid, but essentially, educators started, they wanted to ban calculators from the math classes. So this kind of revolutions always bring concerns in the field of education. But the revolution has started. A more progressive, a more media ecological approach is that, okay, because the technology is changing our environment, the question is how we can rethink education, the role of the educators, the role of the students in this new environment. And I think this is a fundamental question. If we take this question into account very seriously, we can cope with the changes brought by ChatGPT without necessarily being concerned of potential negative impact of this, and understanding that if we are able to control this technology, we will be able to elevate the human spirit. We will be able to, like it happened with the calculators, math students got even better at using mastering mathematics because the calculator was able to boost their abilities. I think the analogy is not entirely correct with the calculator, because the calculator is never wrong. ChatGPT can be wrong. But if we take that different into account, we have a great potential to really unleash the power of imagination, creativity, and rethink higher education for the 21st century.
Rethinking the role, as you said, of teacher, the role of a student. Tell me about your upcoming course about artificial intelligence that is taking place next fall at University of Toronto. I think you have the opportunity to test many of these ideas in the classroom.
Absolutely.
Without being present in the classroom, actually.
Yeah, this is true. I have the privilege of being able to experimenting for new pedagogy and new teaching tools in virtual reality. I've been teaching in virtual reality during the pandemic, so that was quite uncommon. And so, but if not us, who, right, should experiment with technologies and creativity in the role of education? So universities should be entitled to really experiment new pedagogies, new learning or teaching approaches. So to take the experimentation to the highest level possible, I was just wondering, what if a class, a course, is entirely taught by AI? What if content is delivered by AI tools? What's the role of the educators in this new setting? What's the role of the students in this new setting? And so students may likely be more active and proactive in their learning process. The professor will likely become not just a content provider, but he will become an experience designer, a context designer, designing the experience the students will take. A little secret about this class is that, well, not only I will not show up, but again, I don't want to put myself out of job, but again, I will not show up because essentially the actual course content is AI literacy. We want to teach AI literacy, but the real subject is not AI. This is not an AI-centered class. This is a student-centered class. So we want to really understand AI literacy from a human perspective. Where's the human agency in taking the most of AI? how we can improve the human agency, what is our role in make this potential change from a human perspective. And so what's the contribution of our human intelligence in an age of AI? And let me say that I don't like it, but many actually don't like the idea of the label of artificial intelligence. There is nothing intelligence there. It's statistics, it's data, it's computational power.
No emotions.
No emotions, no consciousness, and so on. Of course, nothing intelligent. But where is the real intelligence? Is the human intelligence. The more intelligent we are, the better we can use these tools.
That's what Eugeni Morozov just made this nuanced commentary about it's not artificial intelligence, but no human intelligence. That's different.
Absolutely.
So I think it goes in the same line as your assessment.
Yeah, it's a long-standing discussion on the autonomy of the techniques, the technologies. Well, to some extent, it seems that the technology goes so far that we are no longer able to control it, and so the autonomy of some technological developments. I am more from a humanistic perspective. I conceive technology as a humane thing. So it's something that, again, sticking with the idea of the extension, the prosthesis, which is rooted in Marshall McLuhan's thoughts, but even in anthropologists like André Leroy-Gourhan and other philosophies of technology that really conceive technology as an expression of the human condition. So we are the only animals that can bring technology to such a higher degree and extent to create the new environment we live in. And so based on this approach, again, because technology is humane, it is the human agency that makes a difference. It's the human ethics and behavior and human imagination that makes a difference. Because the technology is humane, we can better understand its potential from a humanistic perspective. And so, again, by creating this extension is the new environment we live in. Our challenge is to understand how to better coordinate in this new environment. What's the actual, how we can elevate the human spirit in response to this new environment. And that's a big challenge, but from a humanistic perspective, I'm very optimistic because I think we will be able to, again, find a deep meaning in this technological development that is respect for the human life, openness, inclusivity, accessibility, and this is up to us. So it's not the technology that will control us. If we take the first step, the first move to proceed according to the human values that inspired our speeches.
So just to end, Paula, because you've been so generous with your time this afternoon, this Friday afternoon. So just to end this conversation, we're just dealing with challenges right now. So what are the future challenges for media ecology as a discipline? Artificial, non-human intelligence, our mental intelligence is one. What else?
Absolutely. Well, some challenges, firstly related to the ethical implications of emerging technologies, because such rapid, quick changes sometimes are too fast to control, to regulate, to understand. Sometimes even we researchers or educators are, sometimes we are too slow, right? I was wondering, now we are all talking about ChatGPT 3 and 4, but there was ChatGPT 1 and 2 already there, so nobody seemed aware of this. So that's why, firstly, the challenge is to be updated, to be able to quickly even not only understand the present, but also being able to foster a mid-long-term vision to anticipate possible ethical implications. When a new technology gets so powerful, present in our daily life, there are always discriminations. So the risk is that the technology will be in the hand of a few, and inequalities, discriminations, or many other people will be left behind. So for a sustainable media ecology where all people are engaged or people are entitled to use these tools, we need to make sure, I think this is the biggest challenge of media ecology, to really create an ecological balance to not leave anyone behind.
Thank you so much, Dr. Paolo Granata. And this is it. See you at the next core talk with more insightful conversations at the Department of Communication. Cheers for watching.